Welcome back to Diary of a Medium Stories from the Spirit World podcast. So, today I have a guest, Debora. Now, Debora is a therapist, consultant, and coach who specializes in yoga, therapy, trauma, disassociation, and grief. Her work is centered on helping people move beyond shame, reconnect with their sense of self, and honor their own unique healing journey. Deb is especially passionate about supporting QTPOC, neurodivergent individuals, and people with intersectional identities, while also mentoring new therapists and delivering mental health training to organizations. Oh, that's a lot. She believes healing is a lifelong journey and is dedicated to creating space where people feel seen, supported, and empowered. And when she's not working, you'll find her enjoying playing piano, hiking, reading, enjoying music and art, and spending time near the water, relaxing with her cats and the people that she loves. I love that. Welcome, Deborah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and for that introduction. Yes, thank you. I'm really excited to be here and chat some with you.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. Where are you joining me from today?
Yeah, I'm joining you from Denver, Colorado in the US. Been here for almost 10 years now at this point. I came from Florida beforehand. So, yeah, it's been really nice to be out here and in the summer now where we have longer days.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And we kind of wanted to touch today really on where maybe mental health meets spirituality and that kind of journey in the intersection, maybe how that entwines as well. And I know that when you sent me your information, you had the letters, I was curious, MA and LCP after your name. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your professional background and how you come to be doing what you're doing today.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I have my master's in counseling psychology, and I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Colorado. And a big part of, I feel like some of my personal journey definitely inspired my professional journey for sure. I was actually thinking about being a coroner before I decided to be a
Oh,
therapist. Um,
okay. Yeah.
and yeah, I experienced a really tough loss in my first year of undergrad that led me to a therapist's office where I'll admit I definitely was being a bit resistant and a little bit difficult of a client. I left that office feeling like they just didn't really know what to do with me or what I was presenting to
Okay.
them. We spent a lot of time in silence, I remember, and that just wasn't really what I was
Wow.
needing in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, after that, I left that experience, and that was the day I decided I wanted to be a therapist because my hope was to save as many people as I humanly could from having to sit in an office and be met with just that feeling
Silence.
that they didn't know that the person in front of them that they were supposed to come to for help just didn't know what to do with their heaviness.
Mhm.
Felt like I really did know how to hold space for grief and for heaviness. And I wanted to share that with others. And like I mentioned, hopefully help some people feel more supported, held, encouraged, seen, and less alone in this life as well. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I actually loved what you said that. I actually wrote it down because I my brain leaves in a second. And it was just how you said your personal journey overlapped to then what you ended up doing professionally, right? And I think that a lot of our listeners, people listening to that, can resonate with that, right? Because generally, through experiences that we have ourselves, we are looking to kind of bridge that gap that we needed,
Mhm.
right? We
Yes.
often become the people that we needed in our own journey, right?
Mhm, mhm. Yes, and I feel like that happens both professionally and personally, and sometimes simultaneously, where we become the people that we needed, like emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and we often then can use those skills and even gifts sometimes to love others in that way and be people that other people need and
Yeah.
take that into our own
Yeah.
professional journey sometimes. I know so many folks that have a personal story as to why they do what they do, whether it was something that involved them or a loved one or just even a gap that they noticed missing in the world that they wanted to help fill.
Definitely. I completely agree with that because I know that I've become the person that I wanted on my journey. And I guess teaching mediumship now, it's me looking back to that version of me that was looking for someone to help me understand, to explain that I wasn't actually losing my mind and that these other things are happening to me as well. And I think that we touched a little bit on how that kind of mental health, or maybe the doorway of something happening to us. So I've often found in my industry where I am that, and so this is my story too, is that when I experience an acute loss, then that's when I started to have these bigger experiences that were happening to me. And there was times in that I kind of thought, am I actually going a bit mad? Is my mind playing tricks on me? And then I, like, if I shared something, I was, oh no, that's just that. I wasn't validated for it. So I did hold a lot of the things that were happening to me in. Right. And I think that in trauma is often a doorway for this, I guess, that deeper self awareness, or maybe if you want to call it spirituality. Is it? Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's actually just more about the self-awareness of self, right? Of your own soul, your own core being, like
Mhm.
who you actually are, as opposed to necessarily, we normally put the label on it like, oh, like spiritual awakening or whatever, but maybe it's actually more that we become more self-aware. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. It sounds a little cheesy, but I really wholeheartedly believe that we are divine beings having a human experience, and we connect both with the divine and the human within. I think it just really changes things in terms of like the lens that we can have and like the way that we move through life. And I definitely would say that like I relate to that. Like I was saying, experiencing loss earlier on in life was definitely a doorway for myself into that spiritual journey and also the mental health journey too. I think even just like losses around my I grew up in the United States, but my family comes from Brazil, so there was even like a loss and a grief that comes with not being as close to family so consistently. Today's day and age, it is a little nice because the internet is different than what it
Yeah,
was even just 20, 30 years ago. Um,
absolutely.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it felt really important to stay connected to my loved ones that I had lost physically life. And I also think that with all the uncertainty in life, it feels and felt comforting to lean on a comforting source, something bigger than myself that I do believe has a more limitless power and energy rather than myself as a in this human meat suit where things are a lot more finite and limited. And yeah, I think that I spent like the first few years of my grief just trying to avoid and push down and just move forward. And I think that as I continued that path, things just felt more disconnecting rather than connecting. And something that really reignited that spark and, reinforced this idea in was my journey in becoming a yoga instructor because I got my master's and became a therapist. So I was
Yeah.
doing that yoga training during COVID and post-COVID times. I was feeling pretty burnt out in the transition from doing therapy part-time in school to being a full-time therapist and that being what I
Yeah.
do all for most of my days. It was a transition that I did not expect to be as challenging as it was. I didn't think it would take so much out of me because I wasn't doing a whole lot of physical labor, but I was always just so exhausted.
Energetic.
Yes, like that energetic labor was very, very humbling to experience for the first time really in my life. And yeah, it was just interesting trying to balance a lot of the burnout and doubt and anger with a lot of gratitude and feeling very blessed also in a lot of different areas of my life. And yeah, I just that change, that a time in my life really demanded a lot of growth for myself, both personally and spiritually, especially when thinking. At that time, I think I was like 25-ish. I've got my whole life ahead of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it demanded so much growth from myself, both personally and spiritually, to really think about how am I going to live life? And
How you're gonna, yeah, just finding the balance, isn't it? Because I guess being that therapist, that's that very analytical side. And then you mentioned then doing your yoga training kind of brought something different in. And do you think tapping into that, doing your yoga and all of that kind of stuff really brought together something different with your therapy work as
oh,
well, like
for
a different
sure.
angle?
Yeah, I've always been a pretty spiritual person. I grew up like going to church with my parents, but one thing I really enjoyed and appreciated about my parents is that we'd come home and they would ask me and my siblings critical thinking questions. What did you think about what you learned? What did you agree with? What don't you agree with? What might you have questions
Okay.
on? And it was more of this conversation rather than just believe everything that's told to you, listen to
That's
whoever
good.
has the power. It was a lot of that questioning and reminders that, like, regardless of the title that someone holds in this life, we are
Yeah.
still all the same in terms. So that was,
And you're that, yeah, that's awesome. I think you can see that introspectively as well because you've gone into a kind of industry quite young, right?
mhm,
At 25, or mentioning when you were 25 doing therapy, a lot of the time we think about therapists being a lot older because they have a lot more life experience then and things like that as well. But there's also that balance of obviously you were brought up in a way to be curious and have your own opinions and that kind of thing as well, which I think is a credit to your parents for sure. I definitely was raised more of it's my way or the highway. I guess just that age or that
it's that like mentality.
that
Yeah.
time, that kind of that being raised in that time frame where
Mhm.
it was like children should be seen and not
Not
heard type
mhm.
of thing.
Oh, yes, no, I totally understand.
But the movement I understand because I think that just the stopping and being aware of the physical body in whichever way that
Mhm,
would be
mhm.
to move, then is connecting back to that nervous system, right? The nervous system being able
Yes.
to be aware of where you are in your body or where what your body's trying to tell you as well. And I think
Mhm.
the one thing with yoga is that it can slow your body down enough to start to be aware of parts of you that maybe you don't notice.
Yes, and it brings it in a environment that is generally a bit more safe and in your control than the outside world. I think that I've always been drawn to the existential and the philosophical, so then with some of those losses that I experienced, it really gave an extra oomph for me to be up here and just stay
Yeah.
in this realm. And I used to dance a lot when I was younger, but then when I was starting college, I really prided myself on being a lot more sedentary. I wasn't
Yeah.
moving around as much. One of my favorite animals is the sloth, and I very much related with the sloth. And but
We've all been there.
yes, and my idea of yoga before is one, I don't know if it's the same there, but out here it can be the way I think it gets westernized is by it being a little more synonymous with a workout rather than the full.
Like a mindfulness
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. Yoga can definitely be power and sweating and things like that too, but it doesn't always have to be, and it doesn't have to be the same thing every day. It can fluctuate as your needs do and as your
Yeah.
day does, which I think was really valuable for me in learning the 8 limbs of yoga during my training. And just seeing a lot of the people I work with can also experience some of that more just in the head type of living. And then if you pair that with meditation as well, it also again reinforces that disconnection from the body. So
Yeah.
yoga I
Mm.
found for me and just body based movements, I think that's something that I've been really appreciating see in this kind of new wave of mental health and psychology is the valuing of mindfulness, spirituality, and especially body based work like EMDR, neurofeedback. Those are a few others that are a bit more widely accepted. But I really enjoy
Yes.
yoga and bringing yoga into the mental health world. That's been my calling so far.
Okay.
I still love to do more trainings and learn. I do still have a whole life
Yeah.
ahead of me, but currently I've been really resonating with yoga just because in my journey it helped me to be more present, to be less dissociative. I'm sure that I'll still navigate dissociation throughout my life because it's just a
Yeah.
part of my experience,
Yeah, we
but
all do though at some point. Yeah.
yeah, not an abnormal reaction to what's going on, especially chronic stress, even outside of traumatic stress.
Yeah.
So yeah, but coming back to my yoga practice, coming back to my body, it really is just like a great way, I think, to connect between body, mind, and spirit and just have a space for all of that to come together. Not just one, not just the other, like really a space for all of
Yeah.
it through, like I was saying, like yoga can be really great for trauma, especially, and grief, because it can, different poses bring different things out of us that we then get to observe and build new ways to respond to it, which create different neural pathways in our brain. And we can then still use these principles of yoga off the mat to help with reinforcing that neural pathway and continuing that response that you had on the mat in your life off the mat as well.
Yeah.
And
I can see. Yeah, I can see that.
yeah, and yeah, there are, I guess I can share the 8 limbs if you're interested.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's because actually I just wanted to put something in there because at the beginning there I said, "Oh, like yoga's not for me because I'm not supple." And now it's interesting we're having this conversation, right? Because I went to a yoga class once and the guy who was taking it actually said to me, "When was the last time you stretched 1988?" And it really made me feel embarrassed.
Yes.
And it really made me go, this is not for me. And it's just interesting that now, like, my preconception is, oh, I don't really like yoga because I'm not supple. But really, when you were talking there, I was like having all these downloads that were coming in, like about that was his interpretation of what he believed. And then I've picked that up and I've gone, this is why this is not for me. Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
And that was like
So,
a
yeah.
similar experience I had too. I was like, "Oh, I don't move a lot. I'm not that person, like yoga." And then I had the opportunity, thankfully, to do the training and I learned that it was just so much more. And it was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
after I had done my therapist training. So my brain was also just like, oh, whoa.
Yes.
Yeah, both in my personal life and then also in my professional life. It's really helped in that way just because. So we have our yamas and our niyamas, which is like values and intentional living, some of our internal and external commitments, ways in which we engage with the world, and then also ways in which we engage with ourselves. And those can really support, in terms of our healing, it can support a lot of inner safety, alignment, and more of a values based living rather than just survival or doing what life is throwing at us. I often that thriving is somewhere between survival and screw it. Um, because
Yeah.
you need one foot in both to
Yeah.
really find that thriving space. You can't overshoot it and just only be in screw it. And you also, if you're only in survival, you might not be open to some of the risks that you have to take to thrive, especially when it comes to trust and
Yeah.
surrender.
I love how you describe that. Yeah, I
So I
understand.
think that that's one way in which the yamas and the niyamas can really help with that values-based living as opposed to oscillating between the two sides. I think of
Yeah.
thriving as that values-based living where we're not just living to survive and also not just living in reaction to whatever is being thrown our way. We have a little bit more of a say in what thriving means, not just holding space for the pain, but also making space for joy.
Yeah, that's important as well.
Yes, especially because there is so much pain in this life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we have asana and pranayama, which we are a bit more used to and familiar with. Asana being the movement, pranayama being the breath work and the breath practice. Those are things included in what we might see on the mat in different yoga studios. And they have a lot of benefit. Those are definitely aspects that can calm the nervous system, release the tension, move the energy through our bodies in different ways. Then there's pratyahara and dharana, which is cultivating that inner awareness and focus. And what that can help with and support in our healing journey is withdrawing from the overwhelm and shifting unconscious patterns, making the
Yeah.
unconscious a bit more conscious, and then being able to shift that. That's where the neural pathways come in as well. And dhyana, which is mindful meditation and presence, gives us the opportunity to reflect, to observe, to create space for new beliefs. And then samadhi, which is integration, wholeness, connection to the divine, being able to reconnect with the divine, which can bring us a sense of inner wholeness just from that deep connection. And it reminds us of who we truly are beneath the different things that we've picked up along the way, that we are divine beings having a human experience. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. It's just so interesting to think maybe if we leaned into these 8 areas, right, and really looked at where our balance is through all of them and being aware and mindful of that, then we can maybe make more decisions or take more actions based on the balance that's needed. And I'm guessing the work that you're doing, obviously you describe yourself as empathy being one of your strongest gifts. And a lot of the people that come into this space or working this space, that we're very empathic, right? But often we are going along scooping up everybody else's emotions and absorbing everyone else's struggles and emotions and all those things along the way. And I think that I'm guessing for you, or maybe I'll ask you the question, maybe I shouldn't guess, is like, how do you balance that and just doing empathic for everyone else, but also maintaining your own balance, your own well being?
Yeah, that one's, I think, really tough for a lot of folks in the healing realm and even in the spiritual realm, like whether we just have that empathic tendency in our personal life, or if we also have a role professionally that requires that from us, and just the different roles we have in life, whether it's being a
Yeah.
friend, being a partner, being a parent, like all of that, I think takes such deep empathy. This answer to that, I guess, would be boundaries. But
Going, oh my God, here we go. Because that's what I'm constantly saying to them.
But yeah, that was the biggest, I think, lesson. It's not just boundaries with others, but boundaries with ourselves, because that
Yeah.
empathy isn't going to stop. And I don't think, I think that's one of the things that I think makes me such a great therapist is the level of compassion that I have. And I don't want to kill that part of my heart. I actually want it to shine more, which is where the boundaries come from. And that was a really big lesson for me, is that boundaries aren't punishment. Boundaries actually are preservation.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that is the biggest skill that someone with a deep level of empathy can develop is, or rather
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
strong, secure boundaries, and to differentiate between boundaries, requests, and demands. Because I think that there can be that confusion that boundaries have to do with other people's behaviors, but they
Yes.
actually, it's more about our behaviors in terms of the accountability piece, because we can't control what other people do. We can make requests
100%.
of others. We can even have demands of others, but we can't control someone else's behavior or for us to uphold, to navigate our behavior or pattern is there. And yeah, like I was saying, there's of course a very deep care and love that we experience, and thus there can be and likely will be strong inner reactions that
Mhm.
we experience when we hold space for others' emotions and their struggles. And we do need ways to direct that emotional energy in ways that allow for the balance and well-being. So like for me, that's why I do so many things, especially having AD. I can't just do one thing. I need to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like, whether that is being by a body of water, doing some art, engaging in art, whether that's like physical art in the sense of like paintings or music or
Mhm.
like TV and movies, because I do consider some TV and movie shows to actually be an art.
Yes.
So, just
Yeah.
engaging in those things as much as I'm able to, I think is a very helpful way for me personally to direct some of that energy in a place where it's not then just going back to me.
Then that comes back to balance, I think, as well, isn't it? It all comes back to finding boundaries. I think, I don't know why, but the term was like, that came in was boundaries are the balance.
Mhm.
Really, it allows for the balance when you put those
Yeah.
boundaries in with people as well. And I think the one of the other biggest things as well is that when you are holding space for other people, then you have, okay, maybe this is what I'll say. I truly believe that we can only meet other people to the depth we've met ourselves. So the depth in which we are willing to look at our own crap
Mhm.
and our own things and is the depth that we can hold other people in that space as well. And I think that's really important to be able to separate the two as well. I know in my industry doing mediumship specifically, it's like I talk to my students a lot about if your nervous system is activated and you're reading for someone who's also activated and in grief, then what the last thing you want to do is to join them, right? Because then we're not holding the space for them. We are then making kind of it a little bit more about us. Do you know what I mean? What can then happen is then the person who you're reading for can then feel guilty or feel bad that they've made you feel that way.
Yes.
So even in what I do is I do a lot of work with my students in shadow work, in nervous system reset and that kind of thing. And I think honestly, it doesn't matter what you do, that work is so flippin' beneficial. Whether you stack shelves in the supermarket, when you get a rude customer that comes up to you and isn't very nice, is how you feel about what they do is going to depend on how activated or deactivated your nervous system is in that moment, or whether you can take a mindful breath in that moment and look at the situation from a different angle. And I was talking a little bit about that yesterday with another girl I podcasted with. It's here's the scenario, but you can look from a place of love or a place of fear, same situation, but through a different lens.
Yes. Yes. And I love that you mentioned that piece, especially on knowing ourselves, because I think projection is just only human. We're gonna
Yeah.
see that lens through our lens, and sometimes
Our
that
own eyes.
involves
Yeah.
our emotion. Yeah. And I think as a therapist, that's huge because even in with mediumship, I can imagine it's very similar because we're in a place of power when it comes to our relationship with our clients. So
Yeah.
it's so important to use that power wisely and
Mm,
responsibly. And a part of that
definitely.
responsibility, I think, is looking at the parts of ourselves that are really hard to look at because it will come out when we're doing some of
Mm,
these things. And the heavier space that we're holding for, the more I think that demands that responsibility too. And the more challenging, and when I say challenging, it's not just because of heaviness, but also things that can challenge your own beliefs and cultural norms,
mm,
like it's important then to be in that position of power and use that power responsibly. And I
yeah.
think
Yeah. Definitely.
yeah, and I think that the first step, especially even when trying to shift from a lens of fear to a lens of love, I think that first step is usually around removing shame and practicing more for the extra human parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
The parts that we'd usually
Definitely.
rather get rid of or hide in a box rather than acknowledge and accommodate. I
Yeah.
think that I kind of learned a little bit of this discipline that was rooted in more shame and punishment rather than compassionate accountability.
Yeah.
And that was just like when I say learned, not that was what was taught to me, but just by observing so many people in the world and the
Yeah.
society norms. That was just what I
Mm,
like took.
your view. Yeah.
Yeah, I think especially a survival based lens can lean its hand to fear, shame, and punishment as well, especially because survival is just rooted in life and death. So that naturally is going to bring about a bit more fear just
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
taking away that shame, I think, actually allows for space for true discipline, which to me is rooted in compassion and accountability. Because with the compassion, I think allows for true accountability that we do need. We can't just toss accountability out the door. We need
Yeah.
accountability in order to make moves towards what we want in this life instead of only focusing on moving away from things because we think that's the same thing, like moving away from something you don't want equals moving towards something you do, but that's
Mm.
not usually the case in life. Usually the things we want forces a little bit of our like us to embrace some of the things that we don't want in order to move towards what we want. And I think with that, it helps us to discern what isn't worth our time and what is actually worth moving through to get to that other side.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is where that kind of maybe even the trauma meets the spirituality, right? This is where the connection and the crossover is. A lot of the time when we've experienced something traumatic, or we've done something that we are ashamed of in our past. And we've all been there. We've all done something, I'm guessing, that we look back and we think, oh, that
Yeah.
this version of me wouldn't have done that
Mhm.
now. And I think leaning into I think the spirituality comes in more when we start looking through the lens of self and going, okay, maybe I need to not, as you said, I'm accountable. I take responsibility for that thing that I did. But now I'm also going to give myself permission to release the shame around what it is that I did because that version of me didn't know any better in that time. And this version of me now realizes because I've then gone through that process and I'm starting to look more in than out. And then I can move through some of this stuff. And I think we could talk about this. To be fair, we could definitely go down a rabbit hole and talk about this forever. But I think that there's some really great points that we've made between the mental health, the work that you're doing with the counseling, bringing in movement to the body and understanding those 8 pieces that, if we looked at the balance of those 8 pieces, and I don't know if you've got something that my listeners can connect with you to have a look at that or to
Yeah.
see, or maybe
Mhm.
a PDF or something that you
Mhm.
can share with me, that I'm sure that they would be like super interested in having a look at that
Mhm.
as well. I guess we'll just wrap up. And I think that maybe I'll put you on the spot and say, if you wanted to share maybe one of the biggest takeaways that you've learned in your journey, what would that be?
Yeah, so I think 2 things come up. Just a reiteration of what I was mentioning, that thriving is somewhere between survival and screw it.
Love that. Yeah.
And I think the second would be that our humanness is very humbling, and being able to accept and acknowledge, because when I say acceptance, it doesn't always mean agreeing. It just means acknowledging our
Yeah.
human limitations and leaning
Yeah.
into that's where I say our humanness is humbling because our limitations can be really humbling. I'd
Yeah.
say that's a really big
Yeah.
one, especially when it comes to the boundaries aspect, because a lot of the times where we can struggle with boundaries and even struggle with our own healing journey is where our humanness is humbling. We're not going to reach a point in our healing journey where everything's just smooth sailing. There's no point of self actualization where it's like
Yeah.
done
I'm
and over
done. I'm
with.
healed.
Yes, like it's a
Yeah.
lifelong journey. I usually say if learning we're dead, it's
Yeah.
lifelong. And
Yeah.
that's a humbling part of our humanness too, is that
Yeah.
life is not just pain, but it is
Mm.
pain. Our humanness, it's evidence that we're human both in the light moments as well as in those heavy moments. Those are both evidence that
Yeah.
we're alive for better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely amazing. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today, Deborah. And it's been so lovely to connect with you. And if you want to connect more with Deborah, see what she's about, I'm going to put all her things here in the show notes, her website, all the places you can find her in socials. And yeah.
Yes.
check her out.
Thank you so much. Definitely check me out. And if y'all are interested in a PDF, I have
Mhm.
two. I have one that has the 8 limbs of yoga with what they relate to. And then I also have a
Yeah,
PDF of 10 different yoga poses that can be helpful for you in your day to day to like bring in these elements just into your day to day. So, yeah, if y'all
beautiful.
are
I
interested
will
in
put the
that,
links. Yeah, we'll put the links down below
perfect.
for them where they
And
can find
just,
you.
yeah, I'll just have y'all send me the email and
Yeah,
then I can email it to you. Um,
absolutely.
but yeah,
No problem.
perfect. And
Sounds
thank y'all
great.
so much.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much, Deborah. It's been a lovely chatting to you. All righty. Bye for
You as
now.
well. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Diary of a Medium Stories from the Spirit World. If something in today's episode has sparked something within you and you are curious about your own spiritual gifts, then check out my website on how I can support you. If you have your own story to share, then please reach out. I'd love to hear from you. If you want to support me, you can subscribe, leave a review, or simply share this with a friend. So until next time, trust yourself, trust spirit, and keep listening to the whispers from the universe. Bye for now.